All right, our recording has started, and this is our AACG meetup for Friday, the 17th of July. It is now. So I want to thank everyone for your attendance, and I want to special thanks to Jay Scott from Habitat Galleries in Florida, because he currently has a virtual exhibit of Dan Dailey online that you can see. And we also have Dan Dailey with us. And Dan, I'm going to let you go ahead and share your screen. So instead of introducing you, you need no introduction, actually. So
I would like to start without sharing the screen and just talk for a couple of minutes.
that's fine. You can do that, but adjust your
No, I
camera
thought I
so
had
we
muted
can
myself.
see
You
more
can
than
hear me?
your nose.
Marilee, you can
Yes.
hear me? I muted it, I thought.
No, you're not muted right now. I can hear you, but you need to, yeah, there you go. We like to see your face instead. Although you
Yeah,
have a nice nose.
I like noses. I have pages of noses in some of my, a whole study page of noses, at least 4 or 5 of them. All right, so I'll start by just saying hello to everyone. And thank you for allowing me to visit your Zoom or visiting me via Zoom. I mean, it's an interesting thing and kind of fun to be part of it. I have to say I did some preparation for this event more than I would in a different way than, say, just giving a lecture somewhere. So what I intend to do is to show you some of my art and explain the ways that I think about my art and why I make what I make, and also explain some aspects of making the work. I know everybody likes to see process. It's sort of the how, but I tend to emphasize the why because I think it's more important. And I'll show you a couple of things that are currently going on in the studio. So to do this, I'm going to make a PowerPoint presentation because I tried walking around with the camera and the both the iPad and the phone, and it's just too much rigmarole. This is much more concentrated, so I think it'll work. And as I show the slides and make this presentation, please just speak up if you have a question or a thought that you'd like to express. And that way it'll become a bit more conversational. And I like it that way. I'm used to it. That's what I generally do. So I'd rather, I mean, we can certainly have questions at the end also, but I'm just going to say a few things and then get started with this PowerPoint. I came from a family of creators. I'm a Philadelphia guy. I grew up in Philadelphia and across the Delaware River in New Jersey, and lived there till I was out of college. My dad was a designer for RCA, and he designed many of their products, an industrial designer. Memorably, he designed their first televisions. And so as a kid on a farm in New Jersey, when I was 4, we had unfinished televisions in our living room. We had a TV that was just the guts, no cabinet. The cabinet would be off of the one. So he'd take the Chippendale cabinet off the TV, and I could still watch Willie the Worm on TV. And he would have, instead of the Chippendale, he'd make, say, a modern looking cabinet, mint green, slanty legs, things like that in the 50s. This was early 50s. So that was one thing, this kind of ongoing development of his prototypes, plus the drawings that generated them. And then my mom was an illustrator. And at the time, she did fashion illustrations for stores like Strawbridge and Clothiers and Gimbals and Wanamaker. And they would take full page ads in the Inquirer, the Bulletin, and my mom's drawings would fill the page of all these dresses and suits and things like that. So this kind of family environment was important to me, and it sort of formed me, I'm sure. It also, I was encouraged to draw by them and to think through drawing and to work on whatever I imagined. So if I had an idea, my dad would help me make it out of wood or out of metal and kind of interpret what I was doing. years later, when I was 18, I went to Philadelphia College of Art. And Philadelphia College of Art was, and still is, I'm still connected. It's called University of the Arts now. It was an amazing experience for me because it challenged me in a lot of ways. It was absolutely full-time, meaning classes started at 8, ended at 6, and you had so much homework you couldn't do it all. And it was that way all the way through. I also had jobs. I've had jobs since I was 12 when my dad died. And so I had a carpentry business on the side while I was at Philadelphia College of Art. I went to art college with the notion of becoming a professional artist. And I could have become, in a situation like that, you go in thinking one thing and get twisted around. That's pretty typical. I was good at drawing, and lots of people there were great at drawing, really good, and painting and so on. I could have easily become a painter, but I was very intrigued by the crafts. The crafts at the time were a deliberate addition to the college, kind of an offshoot of industrial design and the fine arts. And it was, we had ceramics, we had woodworking, we had jewelry, we had fibers, and there was no glass. But while I was a sophomore, the Fenton Art Glass Company gave a $5,000 grant to the industrial design department because they were trying to get industrial designers to come to West Virginia to work with that factory. And there was some family connection somehow with the college. And so when they got that, the college asked me in the summer to work with a ceramics instructor to build the glass studio in 1967. So I built it with Roland Jahn. He had had one class with Harvey Littleton at the University of Wisconsin. So he was a ceramics instructor. He had a little bit of exposure to working with glass for one semester in Wisconsin. We didn't, when we got the studio working, I was, given the honor, since I helped build it, to use it first among the 5 students who decided to just try it. And I was instantly attracted to the material. I couldn't make anything. All I made was a dumb blob. And probably I made all dumb blobs the whole time I was in Philadelphia College of Art. I mean, they started to look like a vase or something. But still, it wasn't really a time of being instructed in the proper way to do it or the traditional way to do it. We didn't have anybody to teach us how to mold glass. It was just, here's another material, make what you want. And I think I'm fortunate because of that. I was never expected to learn how to make a perfect goblet, to learn how to do a perfect Italian pattern or any of that stuff. It vaguely interested me when I looked at books of the history of glass. But aside from doing that, looking in the library for forms and trying to copy them, my main goal was just to figure out what do you do with this? What do you do with this material? And I think one of the things I concluded during my time in undergraduate school was that the way glass works with light was very important to me. So I never got into color or anything like that. My use of glass was experimental from the start, and I tried many types of glass. I tried plate glass. I tried making stained glass windows. I bent some glass in kilns. I tried casting glass by crushing up the plate glass and crushing up the glass that we blew with into molds and things like that. So I did a lot of messing around with the material, but in the end, I continued to experiment and do it in more and more learned ways from experience I gained, so that my vocabulary of materials, and when I say materials, I mean all the kinds of glass. Here in the studio, we have, I have a library of a glass called vitrolite. I have a lot of industrial glass I've collected. I have casting glass and, purposed glass made for different purposes.
You go to the bigger screen.
Then I went to Rhode Island School of Design for graduate school. I spent a year away from college and then went back to school at Rhode Island School of Design. You have a question?
No.
Hello?
I just muted someone who had come on and wasn't muted, so they were just
Okay.
chatting.
Um, I was Dale Chioli's first graduate student. And at the time at Rhode Island School of Design, I helped to build that studio. And then we got that going. And while I was there, I decided that I liked light a lot. And my thesis project upon graduation from RISD was lamps. I made a series of lamps and had a show at the RISD Museum. Then I got a Fulbright grant and moved to Italy and worked. I lived in Venice. I worked on Murano in the Vanini glass factory. And I worked there for a year and I concentrated on lamps. I made a lot of lamps there. At the end of my time there, I had a show of those lamps in the factory showroom. They looked like Vanini product to me, but the owner kept walking around smacking his forehead saying, "These are mad." And so he did keep a couple of them as prototypes, but then the whole thing never went anywhere. And oddly, right now, I have 2 vases in production with Vanini. I have a new relationship with them. I was there 4 times in the past 2 years. And there's something happening. I'm designing some lamp prototypes now, 50 years later. I mean, who'd imagine that? But I like it there. I like what's going on in a factory is very fascinating to me because there are so many capable people who really give a damn. They're trying to do something and they welcome the designer to their process. They don't want that job. They want to make it. They don't want to think it up. I like thinking it up. I like to make it, but I often think of way more than I could make myself. And for years, I've had assistants and used facilities beyond my own to make what I think of. When I left Italy, I went back to Boston. I had an invitation to start a glass program at the Massachusetts College of Art. So I got that going in 1974, 73, I guess. Then I did that for at least 7 years. I got tenure, decided I didn't really want to be a college teacher. So I stayed a professor, but I went back to half-time, quit the tenure, and really put all my energy into my studio, except for the days that I was teaching. And that worked a lot better for me, and I've done it ever since. I didn't like the conflict of all the administrative duties I had as a department head and all the college politics and all that stuff. It's really counterproductive to me. It was just something I'd prefer to be a working professional and work with my students in ways that I felt were informed by my own experience. And then I had a lot of them coming and helping me and staying with me sometimes. You know, after they graduate, they might come and work for me for 4 or 5 years and then go back to graduate school, or they'd go off and be in their own studio or something. So that's engendered a lot of good relationships. I still have friends who were my students in the 70s and 80s in different parts of the country and other parts of the world too. I've had 7 studios, 1 in Philadelphia, 1 in Providence, 1 in Venice, 2 in Boston, and 2 in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and now this one in Kensington. And I'll show you a few things about this studio. I also have relationships outside that I'll talk about, meaning factories mostly, and other people's glass studios. I just want to say one thing about the many relationships that Linda McNeil and I, my wife, have with people who collect our art. Over the past 45 years now, we've met and become friends with so many people who collect our art. And we've formed relationships that are very valuable to us. Not obviously, valuable in the sense that you get dollars if you sell something to someone, but also it's an unusual group of people. They're intelligent, curious, accomplished, often with remarkable passions that are beyond their own profession. And, we've traveled with many people and stayed in their homes. They've stayed in our homes. We know their children. They know our children. And these relationships really are a valued aspect of our lives. It stems from common interests, and it's deeply satisfying. So I'll begin the PowerPoint now. I'm going to shut off this screen and go here. Are you seeing this? Or I didn't share?
You haven't shared yet.
Let me go back and share.
Share the screen first.
Is that working?
I have screen sharing, but I don't see your screen yet. You have to select you have to select a screen so it knows which one to look at. And if you select the wrong one, that's okay. You're back on not screen share again. So hit the screen share button. You need to hit it again. It's not, go down to the screen share button and push the screen share down. You're not screen sharing yet. There you go.
Okay. Now I'm going to go here. Are you seeing that?
Yes, I'm seeing that. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So this is our 200-year-old New Hampshire farm. It's near the seacoast. We're a few miles inland, 15 minutes to the beach, and we're 1 hour north of Boston. It's been a marvelous location to live and work for more than 30 years now. And when we got it, it was a total derelict place. We gutted it, did everything to it. And basically, we've turned what was a working, purpose-built farm into our own kind of quasi-industrial space. So you can see it's a complex of buildings, and we've added a little bit, but mostly it's been taken apart and put back together in ways that allow us to work. The tallest building to the right of the picture, with the chimney on one side, you can see 2 windows in the top of that, and those, well, actually there are 4 windows, but 2 of them are tall. Those windows are on the inside my drawing studio. That's where I'm talking to you from right now. So the 2 windows that are the biggest in this picture are at the top of that barn. And then I have a dedicated area for various things within the studio. This is my drawing area. The shelves that you see in the foreground are all certain pieces from certain series, some things that I'm working on, some things I got out because of various things. Somebody was visiting. I'm working with a curator about a museum exhibition that's coming. The area where I mostly work, where I'm sitting right now, is on the other side of this shelf with those vases at these 3 different tables. And I find it to be, when people work in the studio, I used to have music on or something, but it got confusing. I like the sound of the processes, the machines, and so on. So if somebody's helping me, my assistants, they'll have earbuds so they can listen to a book or something while they're doing tedious work, like sanding and polishing something. I keep sketchbooks. Now, on the wall in the background there in the center, you can see a stack of sketchbooks. To the left of that, there's one of my father's drawings of a radio that he designed for RCA, an airbrushed drawing. That stack of sketchbooks is, I think there are something like 23 of them now, and they go back into the 70s. And I've numbered them, dated them, so that I can use them as a resource. I'll give you a glimpse of one sketchbook here.
There's substantial dependable ring dang do, and several variations on an attitude, different sort of moods expressed. I think I did make something like her eventually. I never made either of these, never made that character or that. I mean, when I make drawings, I just let my mind wander, but it's focused enough on the theme, on the subject. Now this I did get to. I made something very much like this, and you can see I played with it from different angles to see what would work the best and say what I wanted to say. And these are studies of heads. And this was made. This is a piece called Spruce. And I think out of this whole page, that's the only one right there. And I did interpret it as a rather flat head. Everything else, though.
Now here's Spruce. This is the actual piece, and it's one of the pieces in the virtual show with Jay. I'll say a little bit more about the individual series when I get to them in the context of this talk. But on the subject of drawing, I draw constantly as a habit, but deliberately quite often, meaning I'll go to a place intending to draw. I might go to, say, a library in Paris at the Centre Pompidou, which I particularly like. And if it's a rainy day or something, it's great to stay in there for 3 or 4 hours, get out books, make notes visually in a sketchbook, and I gain things from that. I build up this vocabulary of visual thoughts. In this case, is the drawing of a palazzo in Venice with obvious cracked buildings, which are all over the place, the cracked facades, and the constantly deteriorating architecture. Here's a view out of a friend's apartment. This man, Guy Boucher, who was a designer for Dome, same time as I was. And he had an extra room on the top of his place in Pigalle, so I stayed there quite often on my way in or out of Paris. And this is just a view into kind of the distance from that window. Here's a drawing of a scene that intrigued me. It's the view of the back end of the sterns of several boats tied up stern to at a dock in Saint Martin. This is a drawing based on listening to Dizzy Gillespie. It's actually kind of a double portrait of Gillespie, and who knows why I did it exactly the way I did it. Sometimes I don't think deliberately, don't think too much. I just kind of let it go and see what I get. This is one of the lamps that I made at Venini in 1973. It's called Pistachio. Oddly, when I showed it,
I'm not seeing it, I don't think. I'm still seeing Dizzy.
Oh, you are?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got Dizzy on my screen. Now I have Pistachio.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. So Pistachio is a reference to the color in the legs of this piece and on those little pyramidal decorations around. It's a table lamp. It has one extra light that lights up between the legs. I like lights, and I like the quality of light within glass. So lamps were a natural for me, and I've made many of them in a lot of different forms. Here are 3 pieces that I made very recently for a show at MIT. When I first, I think about 1980 or something, I started working as a research fellow at MIT in the Center for Advanced Visual Studies. And at the time I was making experimental light bulbs. All of them blew up. They all just exploded because the tungsten was too darn hot in these thick bulbs. But my concept was to make a very thick, what's called the envelope on a bulb. And then with an element inside of it glowing, use the lens-like qualities of the mass of glass to distort and cast the reflections of the bulbs on the walls around the room. And it worked to some extent. And with these recent experiments, which are have LED lit glass reflectors inside, I sort of regained some of that. This was for a 50th anniversary exhibition of the Center for Advanced Visual Studies. A bird vase made about 1982. Deeply sandblasted glass interested me. And it really came from looking at Maurice Marino's deeply etched glass.
Dan, I'm not seeing that. I'm still seeing the lamps. There we go.
I just had to press harder, I guess, or something.
I guess you do. Thank you.
Or go back and forth. But please remind me if that happens again. I don't know what. So this is birds in rain. And these kind of simplified, symbolic images are typical of my drawings. So I see the vessel as a format for drawing and wrap a drawing around it. I've done that through quite a few different series. You see that one?
Yes, a rabbit.
Okay, this is a jackrabbit. This is a piece made of vitrolite glass. Vitrolite was produced until 1947 and started about 1915 by Libby Owens Glass Company. And they used it to cover storefronts. They used it to make bathroom walls, kitchen walls, and thick vitrolite was used for tabletops and all kinds of things. So I like it and I collect it. And I have kind of a library of it here. And this is another piece made of vitrolite called Cardinal.
Still seeing rabbit.
Does that work?
Not yet.
Still not working?
There's cardinal. Whoops, now it went back to rabbit. Now cardinal. Good.
All right, I hope that doesn't continue to be a big problem. I don't know what to say about it.
We'll work with it.
Yeah. So the Cardinal is a polished vitrolite piece of these animals. I made numerous animals from vitrolite this way, and some became kind of precious objects like this, highly geometric stylizations of the animal form. You can see there's a bug in this one, which is a jewel-like bug. Is that working?
I'm still seeing the cardinal. I don't know what oh, there we go. Donkey. Fabulous
Yeah,
donkey.
this is Jackass. And Jackass is one of several pieces that I made that are what I would call the realization of an animal expression about a person. I like words, and I collect words in my sketchbooks, and then I illustrate the word in some way. So I have a whole collection of titles in my sketchbook that I just keep, and eventually that phrase or single word brings up an image in my mind, and I make that.
By the way, that piece is available on the secondary market now as well.
Yeah, that's right. You asked me about it. Are you seeing this one?
Yes.
This is a piece called Odd Duck. So same thing, another version of an animal expression about a person. I think the plate glass allowed me to interpret the animal form in a way that no other material really could. Its transparency, its opacity, the brilliance of color, the polished surface versus the satin surface, all the aspects of working with glass in different ways that are used in this composition. That transition?
Yes.
Okay. This is a character head from about early 80s. It's called The Doctor. It's my sense of it was that doctoring requires some element of shamanism to work. In other words, people have to believe in their healer. It helps anyway. Are you seeing this one?
Yes.
This is called Apollo. It's from a series about Greek mythology. And Apollo, the god of music, has a lyre on his head.
Yes.
This is the gorilla, a white gorilla, going in for the final reheat in the glory hole. So the piece is just about done, just about ready to come off the punty. And that's what it looks like finished. So it's been sandblasted and acid polished, and that punty finished on the bottom. So these did not require a great deal of cold working, except that inevitably there's a lot of fussy little diamond work to do on the surface with all these applied hairs and so on, to get the piece the way I wanted, prepared for sandblasting and then acid polishing. And this is alligator. So in these animal vases, I had no interest in making something that was anatomically correct to the alligator. No alligator has eyebrows or lips per se. And it's got an almost Disney-like color quality about it, with the red background to the teeth and the very triangular teeth, etc. But it's definitely using the qualities of hot glass that I like. And in a sense, I'm drawing with the hot glass here. Also, the orange lip on this vessel form emphasizes the fact that it is a vessel. So it's a vessel that's an animal. It's standing on its nose, not trying to look realistic. It's just a sculptural interpretation of the animal.
And Dan, I believe Hal and Myra have a question, and if you all want to practice holding your space bar down while you talk, you may make your comment to Dan.
Please.
Okay, go ahead. I just thought they started to ask you a question, so go ahead, Dan, since they...
Okay. This is called baboon. And
now it didn't transition this time, so give it a sec. That alligator vase is fabulous, by the way.
Can you see the baboon yet?
Not yet. There, now we do.
The baboon, all made in the same way, just a different character. I wanted to play on the playful sense of baboon behavior. Although some of it's rather mean, I thought of this character as more playful.
The question from them is, do you ever work with Linda and do collaborations?
We have done that, and early on we did it more, and still Linda will make a metal part for me if it's precious, if it's something that's at small scale. And sometimes, you know, I'll help her in various ways that I can help her. So we collaborate on each other's work to enable the idea that each of us has. The other thing is we've made things for our house, like lamps, I don't know, details that we didn't want to buy because we didn't like the commercial product, so we just made our own. So we have various things around this place that we've made, and we collaborate that way. Can you see this close up?
Yes.
Okay, this is a rather pointillistic application of glass enamels to the surface of a vase. So you can see how many dots of enamel there are. There are thousands of them covering this vase. The vase, can you see it?
Yes, beautiful.
Is called Poison Ivy Man. It's a large vase that's based, the form is based on a Ming vase shape in ceramic. And although it's my interpretation, so there's no vase like this that I know of historically. It's, you know, it's a take on it. But this high-shouldered classic vessel form with a ball-like addition at the top and these kind of handles, it's all based on classic forms, rearranged in my own way. And you can see there's a face on this side. On the other side, there's an illustration of poison ivy. You seeing this one?
Yes, sir.
Called Somersault Man.
A question,
Yes.
Dan, what do you cut through the overlay to make the shape and then apply these little dots of enamel in this?
Well, here's the process. First, the piece is blown, and I do that in Seattle, and then ship it back to my studio in New Hampshire. And then grind off where the punty was, and then cover the whole piece with rubber. And the rubber is thin. It's only about 32nd of an inch thick, and it has an adhesive backing. So I cover the entire form. It's a little bit difficult to cover a form like this with rubber. With it, you know, you want to minimize the overlapping so that it doesn't create a lumpy masking. But that's what I do. I cover it with rubber, then make a drawing on it, then cut away parts of the drawing, which I will sandblast for depth. Then I sandblast it and deeply cut all the areas that are now enameled. So this big yellow piece, this piece is probably, I don't know, 15 inches diameter. The whole area that's now reddish was sandblasted down about 1/8 of an inch. So that takes a while to do in the sandblaster. And then I take the whole mask off and go over all the blasted area with a diamond tool all around the edges of every shape, and just smooth them out and get rid of little chips and so on that were caused by the blasting process. And then totally clean up the whole piece and sandblast everything one more time at a finer or a lower pressure from a slightly bigger distance, so that you get a more broad casting of the blast media. And then the whole piece is dipped in acid for the acid polish. Then I bring it back to the studio. I don't do the acid polishing here. I bring it back to the studio and I start the enameling process. The enamels are glass powder mixed with a medium that burns away at 1,050 degrees. So to put all those dots on a piece like this would take a month. I had at the time a team of 3 people who worked with me, and I would be able to work for, say, half an hour, 45 minutes on a little area, and then that person would be working with me, watching me, and I could walk away from that particular piece for 2 hours and go do something else. So I employed, I asked my employees, my assistants, to do the enameling, but the process is so slow, it's almost impossible to make a mistake. I mean, we didn't really wash off any enamel that I can remember, because you can imagine how long it takes to put, say, that blue shadowing under certain forms. Well, it's just hundreds and hundreds of blue dots. So if I watched it for a couple of hours, I could see how it was progressing and how the blue was blending with the oranges and reds and yellows that are in that mix. Then it goes into a kiln and gets fired. And that's a 2-day process for taking it up to temperature, the vitrifying of the enamel, which then permanently attaches that glass to the main glass of the piece, and then cooling it down over an annealing cycle. So they're very time-consuming pieces. They're kind of obsessive objects.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See this one?
Not yet. There, Nis.
It's called Two Heart Woman. I believe that's in the collection of Joe and Anna Mendel in Montreal, and maybe part of the Montreal Museum, I'm not sure. Here we are in Seattle at Ben Moore's studio. And I'm working on an abstract head. So I have a brass tube in my hand and a kind of a knife, not exactly a palette knife. It's actually shaped more like a cleaver, but it's a good tool for shaping hot glass. I find I can make a lot of forms with it. Preston Singletary has brought a bit, which is the hot glass you see on the end of his punty. Behind him is a guy named Peter Hundreiser, who you can't see. Then Rich Royal is controlling the bit being laid on and cutting it off. And to Rich's right is Ben Moore. And then off to the far right is Robbie Miller. So I've worked with a lot of people in Seattle over the years, but Rich Royal has always been the main sort of gaffer that I've worked with, except sometimes Dante Marioni, and then Ben Moore. and Robbie Miller, all of us have worked together for a long time. So I'd go to Seattle, I'd work for a week. During 1 week, we might turn out, I don't know, 14, 16, 18, sometimes 20 things. And then I'd send them all back to my studio. And, you know, sometimes they don't all work, so I throw out a couple. But I never wanted to own a glass blowing studio. Now here, this is in the Fenton Art Glass Company, which doesn't exist now. I've done my acid polishing in West Virginia almost since the start. I did it at MIT first. And then, I did it in France first at the Dome factory. But then I started doing something in Boston with a guy named Will Hopkins. We did acid polishing there. And then that was too jury rigged, and the stuff is so dangerous. It's not something I ever wanted to own. So I was working at Fenton. They had acid polishing. I made arrangements to go and use the facilities. Here are a whole bunch of pieces. Now this is at least 2 trips to Seattle's worth of blown glass pieces. And they're all sandblasted, all dull, all on this old billiards table somewhere in the factory, getting prepared to be dipped in the hydrofluoric acid. Here we are dipping. At the time, we didn't have air supply. So whenever this photograph was taken, 1991, I was still using the traditional respirators for vapor. And since then, we have rubber suits that are air supply. So they're just that much better than these were. But if you are careful and you proceed in a, at a very methodical, deliberate way, slowly, it's almost like a ritual. And so we have methods of doing it. My acid mix is, it's 70 concentrate hydrofluoric acid, and it's mixed 70-30 with hydrofluoric acid, or sorry, with sulfuric acid. So that's in the acid tank. The piece goes into the acid for about 12 seconds and comes out. Then it goes into the neutralizing bath, and then it goes into a rinse bath. So there are 3 baths there, all sitting in tubs that are overflow tubs. So any spillage goes into those extra tubs. And then there's a ventilation system that gets replaced about every 3 years in this place. And this place is gone. And the one I work in now is much more high tech. The room is robotic, and they move all the robots out of the way for me and set it up. And it's kind of a crazy process. This is an after the acid shot, but there's something weird in the photo from these fluorescent lights, I think, because they aren't really that. Yes.
How old is this technique?
How old is the technique? I have no idea when hydrofluoric acid was discovered, but I knew that Maurice Marino used it. I don't know who might have used it in an artistic way prior to him, other than at the Dome factory. There were acid cut cameo glass pieces that were done by multiple dippings. So I know they had it in Nancy at the factory before the Second World War. So I really don't know when it started, though. That would be interesting for me to know. I'm sorry, I can't tell you.
Thank you.
And you can't keep it in glass. It's commonly kept in plastics these days, but in the beginning, I know they kept it in wax-lined wood containers. Here are 3 pieces from the Abstract Head series. These are based somewhat on Cubist painting, the idea of deconstructing the elements of a human head. And the symbolic nature of these characters, the one on the left called Puff, the one in the center called Sour, and the one on the right called Signal, are all part of my development of the thoughts about capturing a sense of attitude in humans. This one's called Artiste. It's somewhat based on like a portrait of Picasso, who I regard as a bit of a hero to me. It's, oops, I didn't mean to move that. Picasso is, as an artist and as a character, historically, intrigued me. I feel like the modernist painters are probably the most influential on me. I'll say a bit more about that shortly. Another abstract head called Potent, reference to atoms, and the piece is interpreted in primary colors because it's a primary aspect of everything we know. And then a circus vase. Now the circus vases I began after my first visit to a place in Rome called Villa Giulia. Villa Giulia is at the end of the park where the Borghese mansion is, and it's an Etruscan art museum, and the Etruscans made a lot of bronze vessels with animals and humans as the handles on the vessels. So these precede Greek culture. They are very interesting objects to me, and their attitude of stylization of the animals and so on also intrigued me. So this is one of my museum wanderings that became the basis for a whole series. The other part of the influence that started this series is the Circus Museum at the part of the Ringling Museum in Sarasota, Florida. My parents lived in Sarasota at the time, and I went there to the Circus Museum, and there was some of the dumbest stuff I've ever seen anywhere. And I found it really amazing that that spectacle of the circus was such a form of entertainment for so long in America. I think it's faded now. It became Cirque du Soleil, etc. And it's all kind of a lot of hoopla that never could have happened back in the beginnings. But most of the acrobatics and the exaggerated movements and kind of zaniness of the circus, to me, has been lost in service of the spectacular, when it was much more about human, human character before. And I've interpreted slightly differently in my Circus Vase series, but it's still the inspiration, the circus itself. Oh, sorry, my phone's going to ring for 3 rings or so. This is a piece called Singing Dogs. You can see, for example, the stretching of the arms in an impossible way like this is, that should stop now. It's something that I played with in a way that comes from the drawing. So as I developed it as a 3D form, I go through a model making process and so on. There's no attempt to be realistic with any of this stuff. It's all very, almost, if you can imagine this as a flat thing, if you look at just the negative shapes between the figures and the vessel, that's part of my sense of form developing with a piece like this. This is a piece, also a circus vase, called Color Moon. And in some ways quite similar to the other piece, and again in primary colors, red, yellow, blue. I like to use that combination. I've used it endlessly. So the blues are exaggerated from turquoise all the way to the very dark cobalt, and then the yellows are the gold plating, and also the kind of yellow amber, and the red is really a coral red, like an orange. Here's a close-up of a piece called Alta and Basso, and it's a large circus vase, that's about 5 feet high. At some point, the handles on these vessels have become much more of a dominating sculpture, and the vessel itself is a bit like a pedestal. Here's a piece called Smoochers, which I made as a donation to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston. I figured it's in the lobby of their building on Brookline Avenue. And I made it because I thought that people in that situation are not going to be all that happy. They need something uplifting. So it's called Smoochers. And a
How
much more.
tall is that piece?
How big is Smoochers? Or
Yes.
the one that's the Smoochers is about 3 feet high, I think. This piece is about 4 feet high. It's called Aqua Motion. I stopped making the circus vases. For years I would have an exhibition, you know, a gallery exhibition, say one in the fall, one in the spring, maybe one in the winter, different places, you know, like California or New York or Florida or Paris or somewhere. And then, so I made a lot of shows where there were groups of, say, the abstract heads, groups of the circus vases, or, you know, or some other series. And I decided that I had made enough vessels at some point. I've used the vessel so much, I love it so much, and yet I like other things, and I was putting way too much of my time, I thought, into the vessels. And then I let it alone for about 10 years. And now recently, the past 4 years or so, I decided, well, I have something like a dozen of these circus vases I never finished. And I saved some of what I call the blank, the blown glass vessel that is the main form. You know, I just never finished them. So this is a large one, which I call Aqua Motion. And you can see here's a close-up of the figure with the cast glass torso and head and lips. The lips are not formed from cast glass. They're formed from a solid bar of glass that's been carved. And the eyebrows and eyeballs. The eyeballs are vitrolite. But all the drops of water are gold-plated brass, and the figures themselves are brass that's been nickel-plated. And the vase and the torsos and heads are acid polished.
Are the arms and the legs metal?
Yes, they're all bronze, and they're nickel-plated.
How do you attach the metal to the piece or integrate the metal with the piece?
Okay, I made some special tools for blowing that allow me to open up a vessel into a metal ring. That's hard to describe, but while the piece is on the punty, before it's finished, we hold a metal ring in position. It's on the end of a long handle. And then somebody else is working a pair of jacks, and the piece is heated, come out of the glory hole, and you go right to the ring. And then one person holds the ring in position. Another person opens, usually say Rich at the bench, is opening the lip of the vessel into a ring. So it fits a ring. And then the same thing happens on the other end of the other part, but in a different way, because that one doesn't get opened up. It gets blown into a mold with the same size. And then that gets cut off with a diamond saw. So I have two openings on the two parts that fit the same ring.
And do we have a question, Dan? Who did the metal work on this piece?
Let's see. This metalwork was done by some by me, some by a woman named Delinda Barry, who's no longer my employee. She and her husband moved away from the area. And then some parts by a guy named Dana Di Placido, who's a metalsmith who works with me now. So say all those fussy little things like the water drops that require a lot of finishing, the fins on the heads of the fish heads, and then some of the tight glass detail, like the lips and eyes, were made by a guy named Patrick Morrison, who's my current assistant, who does cold glass work with me. And then Rich Royal and not the same crew, Ben Moore, Rich Royal. I've forgotten who all the crew was at Ben's when we made these, because like I said, the glass was blown for this at least 15 years ago. And it's been sitting here all this time. I got about a dozen more. In fact, I'll show you another one that's in progress right now. This one is the biggest one I ever will have made. And it's well along now. So these are the 3 glass parts. It's about 6 feet high. And these things are a pain in the neck to ship because they have to be screwed together. They come apart in 3 pieces. That aquamotion piece doesn't come apart. But the 3-part pieces all had to be, they have giant crates. This is the drawing for it, the full-size drawing. I make drawings of everything, and I make what I would call a technical drawing, like this one. There's a close-up of the male figure. And you see the line on the ring? The joining ring has a line across it. That's where it separates. And there are screws that you can see, but they don't call too much attention to themselves. And you can unscrew the top section from the middle section and the bottom section. And I've indicated the cast glass torso and head in a light, ink wash in this drawing. These are typical of my ink drawings on Fabriano paper.
And a question.
Yes.
Is the drawing 15 years old or is it new?
No, the drawing is new. In fact, I've redone the drawings. I started it out and I didn't think the figures were dynamic enough. The piece is called amour, French word for love. And as it's developed, I realized it was missing some of that kind of punch that I like in these kind of pieces. So I went back and redrew the whole thing and then have changed the figures accordingly so that their activity is more exaggerated and see the way the feet stick out and so on. So this is the metal in progress. So you can see now that it's bronze and brass. I buy the shape, meaning the thickness and the, like if it's a bar or a sheet. I don't really care if it's brass or bronze. It's just a matter of copper content in the metal. So I just have a stock of shape, metal sheets and bars and so on that we would fabricate this from. And then the rings are made of bronze, and those are made in a machine shop nearby where I send the bronze to them. And then they'll make me the rings like this. And then all the soldering and all that stuff is done here. You can see now this is the female is closer to us. The male figure is further away. Those are the flames on the legs of the female figure. And they will be gold plated. And their flames go on the arms, the legs, the ankles, the wrists, and so on. And then these are models that I'm making right now of the fronts and backs of the torsos. So eventually the backs and the fronts will be joined. It'll be one form that gets, when it's finished and gessoed and all prepared, I'll take molds from that for casting the glass to make these torsos. And the same thing with these heads. These are the metal forms that mount on the tops of the torsos for the fox female and the tiger male. You can see their lips are shapes that insert, and what you can't see is they have slits in them because the teeth get mounted in those. So the lips will be gold plated. I'm not sure if I want to gold plate the heads or not, or the ears. The collars are below the heads. So all these parts, I make drawings and we slowly make the parts and fit them. Sometimes there are prototypes. It's just, everything moves along slowly. This is the Dome factory in Nancy, France. from another time. It's from the 1800s. And I like this old photo. And the factory, oddly, hasn't changed that much in look. But now it's basically a museum. The whole darn factory has moved its main facility to Vin-le-Châtel, about an hour away, further west towards Paris. And the town of Nancy made some parts of the factory into condos and bulldozed under a whole bunch of old glass. It was really a shame. But I worked there a long, long time, and I have fond connections with Dome. When I first went there in 1977, luckily Pierre de Cherizet, who had just become the president, director general, as they call a CEO there, he just took over, and he asked me to stay. So Linda and I were together, and we stayed, the two of us, before we had children, for 6 weeks, and really got to know the place, got to know a lot of people, made a lot of friends, and began working there. So both of us were able to make a lot of things of our own with factory facilities and all their colors and all the stuff that they have. It enables you to do all kinds of things. And at the same time, Pierre asked me to design some limited edition sculptures. So he asked me to make something on the theme of dance, and he asked me to make it look Art Deco, because he knew that I was fond of Art Deco. Because the first day I met him, I had to give a lecture in French. My French was really terrible then. But I gave a lecture in Paris at the Dome headquarters. And then at some point, I must have talked about Art Deco. So he asked me to make some Art Deco looking sculpture. And I did. The first one was this piece called Dancers, which was made in an edition of 200. And then I made this piece. He asked me to make an Art Deco nude. And then he asked me to make another nude, and so on. The nudes did very well and sold rapidly. So they would make, in this case, this is called Le Vent, the wind. They made 150 of them. All of the nudes have some crystal detail. In this case, it's a bracelet. This piece happens to be based on a Lalique hood ornament, which commonly is called a mascot for old cars, and it was a version of the goddess Electra. So it had the streaming hair, which I really was intrigued by, and I incorporated it into my thinking about making a nude. This one's called Le Vin, the wine. Obviously, the crystal is the glass. This one's called Le Joyau, the jewel, which has an earring. And there's also a reference to ancient Egypt here. The hairdo on this one especially, but on the others in the series, all comes from certain carved basalt ancient Egyptian statuary. A piece called Le Soleil, the sun. You can see there's a small sun in her hand. Now I'm showing you a painting by Caravaggio. Caravaggio is really one of my image heroes. This painting is called Card Sharps, the Card Sharps. So these two guys are taking advantage of a young duke and cheating him at cards. You can see how Caravaggio's invested some powerful effort and skill in depicting the clothing of these characters. The young duke is almost childlike and looking very innocent, and he is dressed perfectly. The guy standing behind him has his tunic buttons are broken, and also he's got holes in his gloves. The other guy, who's pulling a card out from behind his back, according to the number of fingers held up by the other guy, is his sleeves are ripped. I don't think that's all about style, the way his sleeves are coming apart. And interesting also that sleeves are a separate thing. But the brocade in that guy's tunic is pretty amazing. The way it's depicted, same color, but one because of the nap and the raised elements of the cloth catching light in a certain way. Caravaggio was this amazing master of a lot of things and totally in control of the way light is defining form and color in the picture. Another painter hero of mine is Ingres, and Ingres, this piece is called Odalisque. He got a lot of criticism for because of the impossible anatomy. At the time, some of the critics were saying that he's added 5 vertebrae to this woman, and made her head way too small and so on, and made her arm impossibly long. Her upper arm is outrageously long and so on. Well, I think he knew what he was doing. But I also think, in a way, all the attention to the drapery and the details and all the jewels and the peacock feathers and all that stuff, I think some of that is evidence that he had all the skills, was extremely observant, and I don't think anything in the exaggeration of the figure was by accident. So I like imagists like these two. I also really like Titian. I love Hieronymus Bosch. There are certain painters in history that I think have influenced me more than any other kind of art. Here's a piece I made, I don't know, maybe 1983 or 4. It's called Nude on the Phone. Nude on the Phone has a Playboy nude from the 80s in America, a lawn jockey telephone stand, and lawn jockeys at some point were prominent in suburban developments to be out on the front walk holding a lantern, let's say. He's holding up a telephone that's at the time in the 80s, for me, a very kind of modern telephone. And then a 1925 Pierre Legrain Art Deco chair with mint green leopard skin. This piece came from a drawing that I made in Saint-Germain in Paris at an outdoor cafe called Du Magot. And I like sitting in a place like that, watching people watch each other. And that's what this is about. It's called Cafe. This piece is another vitrolite piece. It's an overhead view of my brother eating deviled eggs. It's called Eggs Prisonniers. And this is a piece about glass collectors called Anguish. Once in a while you get a broken piece. And so this broken piece, I didn't throw it away, I made another piece out of it. This is a piece called Romance. The spaghetti is metal and spray painted, it's not glass. I freely use combinations of material, but in these things, it's mostly metal and glass. And this is a piece called Freaked Out and Pissed Off. Another vitrolite piece, and it has hair made of zinc plated brass. And a piece about enduring love. It's a couple, it's called Likewise. It's got a symbol in the purple tulip there of enduring love, and a kind of yin-yang flower pot. And a piece called Afternoon. This piece is about biological clock, and her clock is ticking. She's on a pillow of kissers. So all the faces drawn in this line drawing that kind of doesn't stop. It's a continuous wandering line all over the pillow that has quite a few faces and lips. And the clock is, to me, a man clock. The clock's permanently at 3:30 in afternoon time. All those things in the blanket are symbols of kind of regeneration, fertility. And they are cross sections of seed pods from fruits and vegetables and nuts. And the guy's chrome plated and gold spurs are maybe suggesting that she's trying to kind of spur herself on. Now I'm going to get into a different kind of work. I've had opportunities come to me, and luckily they came to me, and I was happy to say yes, to accept a challenge and do something that was well beyond what my experience showed. Here is a mural in the Rainbow Room in Rockefeller Center that I made in 1986. Above the bandstand, there's this mural. And it's a terrible photo of it, but it's the only one somehow that survived. And that piece had to come out of Rockefeller Center about 5 years ago because the room itself was landmarked. And it had to go back to its original 1939 design. So all this, most of the stuff you see in this picture was not, didn't stay. And that chandelier, which was made in Czechoslovakia, did stay. And the revolving floor is still the same, all restored. The piece that I made is called Orbit. This is the plaster model for it in one of my Amesbury studios. You can see each one of those square foot plaster blocks has been cast in clay. And then I put it on the wall to refine it. And then I took all the plaster blocks to West Virginia, to the Fenton Art Glass Company, where I had a whole bunch of these cast iron frames. We put the plaster in the frame, then pack it in with sand, then CO2 set the sand, and then it becomes a mold, and you can pour hot glass into it. And then the hot glass then is the whole thing, mold and glass, everything, were put into an annealing oven for about a week. Then all those blocks became this mural. And it's clear glass. The whole thing is clear. It's got a painting behind it that creates the color. The piece was donated to the Toledo Museum of Art by Tishman Speyer. Jerry Speyer happens to be an art collector and made it possible. So thankfully, the piece is now at the Toledo Museum of Art in a good place. They built out this place for it and put in the electronics and so on. And then Owen and I, my son Owen and I, went out there and did the installation and restored the painting and worked with the people there. So here's the painting being restored. You can't really see any of the details. I'm not showing detail shots right now, but it has a lot of kind of, based on the history of art, certain things influential, like the Venus of Willendorf or Duchamp's chocolate grinder and a few other things. I mean, there must be 25 images at small scale hidden to somebody who walks up and takes a look. This piece is on a program that changes colors over an hour. Originally in the Rainbow Room, it changed over the period of the evening and it was controllable by the maitre d'. But in the museum here, they just have it on automatic hourly changing. I mean, it goes back, it does color changing over an hour and goes back to where it was. A close-up of a cast glass figure on a chandelier. That's the chandelier in an apartment in Manhattan, owned by Simona and Jerry Chasen. They got me into this. They asked me to make a Pâte de Verre figures and a chandelier. And I hadn't made anything quite like this before. So I said yes, and then figured it out. I made the glass at Dome in France. It's got a very dark patina, almost black. These are blown glass pieces that I made in Seattle, and they are on a steel armature. There are 4 of them. They have lighting systems within them. They were in a bar called Windows on the World, and at the opening, the grand opening, one of the business owners was there, hugging and kissing the piece. Michael Whiteman and his girlfriend, I forget her name, and that's like 2 a.m. or something. The photographer stayed up. I didn't stay up. And then it was in Tower 1, so it's obviously gone. That whole, well, obviously everything gone.
And we had a question. Does your son still work with you, or does he work with you?
He does work with me. Owen Dailey is his name, and he has his studio in Meriden, Connecticut. And actually right now, Owen and I are looking for a place. He moved to Providence because his girlfriend of 19 years, maybe they'll get married when they're having their 20th anniversary, I don't know. But they bought a house in Providence because she's at Providence Hospital now. She's a pathologist. So he's looking for a new studio building, and I'm thinking seriously of consolidating, moving my studio in with him to just, you know, make another chapter that's going to be, maybe I won't have to deal with some of the issues of running a place. And that would be interesting. It's another subject though. But yeah, Owen has a good studio. He's got 7 kilns. He's really good at glass casting, and he also is managing projects. He'll go places for me or for other people, and has done a lot of different things. This is a stairway that I made, designed and built for a house in Connecticut, and it's called Foxes in Grass. This is a close-up of one of the foxes. Here's a good example. Owen made I made drawings. He made the original models for the bronze castings and supervised the bronze casting, and then delivered it here for finishing, final fitting. He also made the models for the glass castings that go in all the foxes, and made the glass castings. The piece is made of bronze. What's balusters, or the blades of grass, are all cast bronze pieces that were straight, and then using jigs that I designed according to drawings, I bent each one prior to nickel plating it. So it's all nickel plated bronze for the grass. And then the wood is sycamore and ebonized cherry, and that handrail has raised. If you rub your hand across it, all the black lines stand up 1/8 of an inch. So there's a texture that you feel. So it looks interesting to me, and it feels good. And then at the top, there's a hidden detail. They wanted a surprise, so they got this blue bird that you don't notice until you get to the top of the stairs. And then here's the way the handrail ends, where it kind of mimics the way glass behaves when you stretch it. So the lines get skinnier and kind of dive back into the newel post. Here's a cast glass piece for Chris Rifkin for her house in Hingham, Massachusetts. I don't know if you know Chris, but she's a Boston area woman who's done a lot for the art world, especially the New Bedford, Brockton Art Museum. It's called Fuller Craft Museum. She lives fairly close to there and has put a lot of energy and time into that place. So this is a mural called Neighbors. It's a piece based on one of my line drawings. That's the scene from the interior. This is from the exterior. This is in my studio. The red color is the color of the Muntin bars on all of the windows in her whole place. It's made by Anderson Windows. So we had it painted in a paint shop to match the Anderson color. And then this fits right into her house. So that's what you see from the outside. There's Chris.
We don't, so we're not seeing that. Oh, there it is.
Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there's Chris. And you can see when the lights are on in her house at night, you can see that the tracery of the imagery. It's a pale blue. It's almost clear glass, but it's pale blue. Can you see this?
Like a zodiac?
Yeah. This is a drawing, but a technical drawing based on my original ink drawing. And it shows a lot of information that we needed for building the piece. It has 12 figures, 6 male and 6 female. There they are in cast glass on these bent glass panels. The glass that's bent, the white glass, was made by a guy named Ray Algren in Portland, Oregon. And Ray was one of the original partners of Bullseye Glass, but he has his own studio and he's an ace glass caster. And Owen has worked with him a bit to learn things and to exchange information. The blue glass figures were made here in the studio and then shipped to Portland, and then Ray fused them to the white glass and then bent them. In the back of that, you can see the frame that they go into. This frame is for a big chandelier. It's a 5-foot diameter chandelier. And you can see it has a lighting system. It has 3 separate circuits, so they're all individually dimmable and controllable. That can give it, all 36 lights can be on at once, or you can have 24, or you can have 12. So no lights are ever running at full capacity, but you have huge capacity. The other thing is in the bottom of the piece, in this kind of upside down walk, there's a built-in 12-point compass. And 1 point, which is blue, indicates north. This chandelier is on a yacht, and it's in a very low ceiling on one of the upper deck, in the upper deck. And so it couldn't stick down out of the ceiling. It actually goes up into the ceiling because I wanted some space, obviously, to reach in and change bulbs, but also to kind of bounce light off of the ceiling. So as the boat moves, that blue point changes and indicates north at all times. So it's synced with, it has a computer system runs it. It's synced with the boat's main compass. Now here's a fake photo made by one of my assistants to show me scale. That is a theater in Providence, Rhode Island, called the Providence Performing Arts Center. And positioned in the ceiling where there would be a chandelier are 2 Chevy Suburbans. This is the piece we made for there, and it's a chandelier. It's a really big chandelier. It weighs almost 2 tons, and it has 350 lights. So there, the crew, the stage crew, when it arrived, they almost wouldn't let me touch it. They just said, "Oh, we're going to do this," and they did all the assembly and everything. It was just kind of strange to work there. A great thing though. They love it, and they took it over right away, and they literally own it and technically own it. So there it is, lit up. It has LED lights, all the blues, and the red light at the bottom, the big red ball.
We're not seeing the lit up. There it is.
So you can see that they were concerned because the Rhode Island Historical Society was saying, well, this place is 1929 Roush and Rouse Theater. It's got to be just right. And then various other people were concerned because they had spent a lot of time and money getting the theater just right. And it's got such a hodgepodge of style, different elements of history, iconically, in symbology, all over the place, with all this elaborate decoration. So they wanted it to look appropriate to that and also look like my work. And that was my attempt, to reach. In typical style, I showed him 50 drawings to begin with. We got it down to 10, then I got it down to 5 and then 1, and built a prototype, had it in there. And then the prototype was kind of crazy because it was all paper and wood. But I hung it up there and, you know, tested the scale so I could stand away and look at it from 100 feet away and see that it was right for the space. And it works. It was an amazing job. Here we are on the outside deck of a building in Manhattan, and made 2 gates for this apartment. This one's called spring. This one's called fall. They are electronically operated, so they have a locking system, and it's kind of a security gate. There's a private elevator you can see on the other side of this gate. Here's a door, a cast glass door made for a house in Rancho Mirage, and it also is operated from below the. That's what I didn't say. Those gates and this door are operated below the threshold.
We're not, the door. We're not seeing the door. We're still on the. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
So this door has a hydraulic operator underneath, so that if you were a grandchild and you stuck your hand in between that closing door, it would stop the door. So it's a very sensitive closing mechanism. It's a quite heavy door. I can't remember what this weighs, but it's big, as you can see. And it's called Clouds and Canyon. It's a reaction to the, you know, that part of the California desert is kind of fantastic, especially up against the walls of the ridges, the mountain ridges. And even the color is a reaction to the area, to the coloration in the area. I work with the architects, they're Seattle architects, and you know, to develop this piece. That's what it looks. It's kind of a Sunset Magazine looking photo. This guy's very theatrical, the photographer Anthony Gomez. A table with a cast glass figure made partially at dome, and like a console table up against a wall. Another table a little bigger called Cheetah. Cast glass figure and all the fronds. It's a bronze casting that's been nickel plated. This is a chandelier, fairly low. I mean, a short stem, so it's close to the ceiling, relatively close to the ceiling. 2 figures in bronze. Here's a chandelier with 2 dogs. They're the poodles. This piece was commissioned by Michael and Eileen Gotts in New York, and it's a tribute to 2 poodles that they had. So these poodles have been very stylized. There are a lot of cast glass elements throughout the piece, and they are nickel-plated bronze castings rather than fabricated from sheet stock. So there's more dimensionality to the figures here. See the detail? Did that come through? The detail shot?
Yes. Yeah. It's really, no, the detail didn't come through. We're still looking at the whole piece. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So you can see some of these kind of fleur-de-lis leaf forms are mounted at the rim to catch light from the interior, and the whole thing is designed to catch light from the main bulb system. So the bulbs are aimed in certain ways within the globe to illuminate the castings on the 2 dogs, and also to obviously light up the room. And that's the thing about making chandeliers that actually function as a chandelier. Quite often I have to do a study with a wood model in the space and turn it on and check out the lighting to see what it will do, so that if you need to see where you're going, or read a book or something, or see each other, or see the food, you want to be able to do that from the switch at the wall, you know, not wish you bought something, you know, at the lighting store instead of from me. You see this one?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a chandelier with 4 cast glass figures. that's much larger. And I've made numerous pieces like this, mostly on commission. It's tough to make a chandelier that's not for somebody, because no matter what I do, somebody always says, "Oh, could it be green? You know, or could it be bigger or longer? Or, you know, it doesn't fit my space, or something like that." But when I take a commission, I always go to the place, understand it, ask a lot of questions, and propose a number of things, and then eventually get down to what I'll make. But it's at that point a well-discussed subject, so that I have a really good understanding of what I'm going to do, and so does whoever I'm working for. You see this?
No, I'm still looking at the, oh, yes, now, yes.
All right. These are 2 seated nudes, and then 4 lamps receding into the distance, and towards the right of that, there are 4 more lamps that are duplicates of the ones you see on the left. So all those lamps and some other ones were made for one house in Portola Valley, California. And kind of a typical commission where somebody wanted to have a certain look, and I worked with the designer, worked with the person whose house it was, to develop the drawings, and then the pieces. Did that switch, Marilyn?
Yes.
Okay. So a male-female pair of sconces, 2 female seated nude sconces with blue prisms, and bird sconces. I've made quite a few bird sconces in different forms. Sometimes with these, for example, I've made some other bird sconces using the same castings, but say turning the heads to the right or left, changing the colors, changing the jewel that they're holding in their beaks, changing the head form or the angle of the head, and that neck section that's gold plated. So I've made numerous changes to these while still working with the same form. And now I'm about to totally change the form and go to a different looking bird. But I really like the bird as a sculptural starting point. And it's been something that's a constant for a long time. A figurative lamp called Jazz Jungle, and another figurative lamp called Luxuriant, with a fantasy plant, 2 fantasy plants. And a figurative lamp called Wind. He's got an ionic column. He's holding on to classicism. This is a large piece, about 5 feet long. And as a lamp, I guess you could technically call it a lamp, but here's a good example of a sculptural form that's based on my penchant for making illuminated objects. It does light up, but it doesn't illuminate space really, and you certainly couldn't read by it. No, it's just a red light. This is a large lamp, 7 feet high, called Upside Down Man. And another one, almost as big, called Swiveler. And this is a piece from a series that I call Scenes. The scenes were inspired by looking at the sculpture of Jean Arp and thinking about the stylization of the human figure, reducing it to such an austere kind of head and body form with no articulated arms and legs and that sort of thing. I've used the glass in this case this is a good example of how kind of seductive the colors of glass are, especially when capturing light like this, when they glow because they're acid polished. So it's a good example of why I like acid polishing, because it really does emphasize color and form. There's no confusion with reflection. And I feel like I've got a vocabulary that enables me to create a feeling through the color and through the simplified forms. From the same series of scenes, this one's called Monument. And this is obviously a sort of Venus-like figure set in with forms that represent a city and an impossibly big female form, but with no articulation, or no face, no arms, no legs. It's not intended to be anything other than suggesting a human form, as opposed to the architectural forms. So one's kind of organic, the other one's geometric. And even the base, the way it moves in and out geometrically, is different from the other pieces in the series. Now, this is the series that Jay has a show of right now. And one piece to the right is in the show called Far Away. Far Away has a sister, and her name is Curious on the left. And this is Dubious.
Dubious did not show, is not showing.
Is that showing now?
Nope. Still on Far Away. Ah, there's Dubious. Dubious in a red shirt.
Dubious is a red shirt with a barbed wire pattern.
Yes.
And all these pieces, the individuals, can you see her? This is Diamonds.
Yes.
This is also in the show with Jay. The bust is it's been interpreted traditionally for millennia, and I like that. I like looking at ancient Greek or ancient Egyptian statuary. I liked busts, but I wanted, when I first started making them, I realized what I want to do with a bust is to get away from tradition and to kind of move toward something that depicts a person for a different reason. So they're not heroic. They are about a mood or about a quality of character. You see this piece?
Mm-hmm.
This is a non-traditional bust, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Perspective. It's about introspection, or contemplating the navel, whatever you want to call it. It's about inward thinking, and maybe to the detriment of that person for not looking outward. Also, here's a good example of color use, where the transitions of color from the purple to the blue-green to the amber to the blue-gray, or green-gray, blue-gray, amber of the head, all that, to me, I can't imagine another medium that would allow me to do this other than glass. Now here we are, Rich Royal and I are working, I forget who the guy is in back. He only worked with us one time when we were there. Michael somebody. But I'm shaping something with cork while Richie's blowing into a hole that's poked in the bottom of that bubble. And it's a bust. It's the torso of this piece. And you can see my assistant, Pat, who does the cold work, is holding an arm and a sleeve for the same piece. I'm holding the head. It's not attached yet. I'm just holding it there while he holds that up, and I can study where I want something to be cut off, how I want to be fit at what angle, that sort of thing. Now, this is the back of the finished piece. The piece is titled Philadelphia, It's about Alexander Hamilton, the quintessential Philadelphia lawyer. And there are symbols of Philadelphia that are engraved bronze pieces that have been gold plated. There's the Liberty Bell, the Betsy Ross flag, Benjamin Franklin, William Penn, a Philadelphia pretzel, and Bobby Rydell, numerous Philadelphia icons. These are those underway. You can see before they were cut out, you can just see Bobby Rydell and Benjamin Franklin down here in the foreground. And the Franklin Institute and the Betsy Ross flag are already cut out. And the other ones being cut out, and that's actually Delinda Barry, while she was still working with me. And she's doing the metalsmithing on those symbols for that piece. So she's fussing with some detail on one of these right there on the vise. And that's the front view of Alexander Hamilton with a feather pen, a quill pen, and giving a peace sign. This piece kind of about a weatherman. It's called Rain or Shine. And this is a piece called Silken, kind of a soft person, a very gentle person. And a piece called Magnificent, which is based quite a bit on Holbein's portrait of Henry VIII, which I find intriguing painting, largely because of the impossibility of the character portrayed. Massive torso. It's just such an exaggeration. It's bizarre, and yet somehow made to please the king. And then here are some individuals that were recently made. I don't think I'm going to make any more individuals now. I'm done with this series. But a couple of years ago, I was asked to make a single piece with 9 of them on it. And so here they are, all lined up. It's a bar scene. You can see the drawing on the wall. Actually, 9 drawings on the wall are just large copies, full-size copies of my original graphite drawings that we had in the glass blowing studio to blow the parts and so on. And then the pieces are set up in the order that the actual sculpture is made. At this point in the making, they were just on a big, you can see just barely in the foreground, you can see some steel sticking out underneath that plywood. The plywood was to build a template to test lighting. Here we've started to cut some holes in that template and install lights to illuminate the figures from the platform that it'll sit on. And then there's the platform. The platform is fabricated from stainless steel, which we made partly in a local machine shop that has large capacity, and then partly here. And then the lighting, a good chunk of it came from Italy, which was a total pain in the neck. And that lighting has 9 lights that light up the bar, and 27 lights that light up all the figures, different circuits that are individually controllable. There you can see the bartender has no shaker. Here he's got a martini shaker. And this is the piece in the house installed. It's not 100% finished in this photo, but you can't really see it. It was just, the owner sent me an iPhone photo just to let me know that it was in. I did not go because of, this piece got shipped in, I think, January, and it got stuck in Dallas for 2 months in a warehouse. A U.S. art, the art handling company I work with, they had a warehouse in Dallas, and it got stuck there. And then finally it was delivered May 26th. And because of the way things were going, no, we had already canceled the airline reservations and so on. But in the end, I just wasted the airfares, and Owen and two other assistants rented a truck and drove from Massachusetts, where they all met at one guy's house, to Scottsdale, installed the piece, and drove back, and didn't interact with people really at all. They stayed in decent hotels at night to get a good night's sleep and get back on the road. And they took their food in coolers and cooked it in the hotel room, and just stayed away from people. So the piece is there, but I still have to go back and take off some tape and a couple of jigs and adjust all the lighting, because the lighting from above, not the lighting that we made, but in the ceiling of the house, there are quite a few lights that need to be aimed in a certain way to do what I want for this piece. You can see they have a nice big Chihuly over there. And then getting down to the end here, there are some 3D drawings made of wire. So I'd taken one of my ink drawings and turned it into a wire composition that floats above a white background, so that casts a slight shadow. Here's a piece called Party. You can see here in the frame the way it's built. It's about 3 inches deep. A similar kind of piece made out of much heavier metal stock with cast glass embedded, that's mirror backed. It's called Nearness. And then a piece called Inquiring, which was for a lobby of a Four Seasons building in Manhattan. It's a 7-foot long drawing made that way, with a very, very dark brown patina that matches some trim in the building, some bronze trim. And then taking that same kind of almost similar approach to drawing, I made these white forms that allude to a vessel, except there's no opening. And so they're just a white form where I sandblasted through the white to expose color. In this case, this piece is 2 faces right up against each other, called Eye to Eye, male-female piece. And a vase form that's not a vase form, that is called Industry.
Not seeing the vase. There.
This piece is called Industry. It's a fair-sized object, and the form itself is an allusion to, say, a big tank and a big tower, and just having to do with what depicted in this line drawing. And then these are the last pieces I'll show you. They're called cane murals. They are literally compositions made all with canes. So we pulled a lot of cane, and then I cut it up and ground and fit it in bundles and slumped them together in an oven so they're fused. So say some of the building shapes that are depicted are basically one slab of glass that's made out of a lot of rods. But by pulling the rods the way I've done it, I can control color and build my own palette to work with in these murals. This one's called Vertigo. It's a view of 57th Street looking up as you walk down the sidewalk in this canyon of buildings. This is a large one called Cupids. It's based on this old yellow house that I love in Governor's Harbor on the island of Eleuthera in the Bahamas. It's a wreck of a house that's totally weather-worn, left over from when the British had plantations all over that island. And for some reason, it still hasn't fallen down, and it's out there on this little spit of land. There's one dead car depicted near it. I wish I could zoom in and show you that, but I don't have a detail. But you get the idea that I'm blending all these blues, building a whole palette of blues, and then using them to compose the sky, interrupting the blues with white short pieces of cane to make the sparkle on the water, etc. A piece called Sky Fire, which is maybe an allusion to the to the horrific pollution in the air that makes beautiful sunsets. And it's inspired by a town in Ohio where I saw something like this, these forms of stacks going into the sky. Is this one visible?
Yes.
It has, it's called Yorkville. This is a view of a neighborhood in Manhattan called Yorkville from Astoria Park, Queens, with off to the right, the underside of the Triborough Bridge. And some white streaks on the water and a car in the foreground. And then this is a view of oil tanks in Linden, New Jersey, at the end of the runway of the Newark Airport. So this is seen from the highway. I like making these scenic pieces. I hadn't done anything like this before. When I started the cane murals, it was all about landscape, and then it evolved to cityscape and factoryscape. And a couple of them have depictions of, I guess 3 or 4 of them have depictions of cars. This one's the only one I think I've done that has an airplane. It's a bit realistic, and yet because of the nature of the composition, it's all chunky with the glass of different heights and diameters and so on. It to me breaks it up in a way that I find intriguing. And the composition of the sky in all these impossible colors is just something I feel rather than plan. I mean, I have drawn it. I even make pastel drawings of these things before I make them. But at the time I'm making it in glass, I'm reinterpreting what I've already stylized or changed through my interpretation in it as a drawing. When I make it in glass, I have a new palette to work with, and I freely use it because of the way the glass color inspires me at the time. And then finally, this is a view down into the studio in the front of the building. And you can see 10 of the pieces that are in the show that Jay has. So those are 10 individuals, and he has other videos that shows them up close, and some of them being rotated on that pedestal there that spins around, just to give a sense of what's in that show. So that I'm going to switch back the screen. And if you have any questions, if anybody's still there.
Fabulous. Fabulous. You didn't lose many people, even though we're at 2 hours. So that's amazing.
Oh, really? 2 hours?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, you should have set me off.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Larry Seabrack.
Hey, how you doing, Larry?
You're a true master. It was fantastic.
It was.
Thank you. That's a nice compliment.
I have one question. I often end a lot of my lectures on glass with freak out. And
pissed off yet?
Yeah. Where is freak out and pissed off?
It's in the Chrysler Museum now at that show I have.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thanks again. It was fantastic.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
I'd like to say I've been on AACG trips where we saw your doors in Manhattan that you showed, and the Chazen chandelier. And there was another one I was going to say that. And the in the Providence, the huge chandelier in the Performing Arts in Providence. So AACG's been secretly following you for a long
So
time.
did they turn on that chandelier when you visited?
No, I don't think they did. Does anybody else on that trip remember that?
Yeah, I think they did.
Did they turn it on? I don't have a
Yeah,
memory of that. I just remember it was absolutely fabulous.
Hi, Dan. Art Sherman. You're an amazingly talented individual.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what? I feel like I'm lucky to have found something that I really love to do, and that I've also found enough support over years and years, to be able to continue doing what I do, to support my habit, because what I do is kind of wacky. I mean, when I go to West Virginia to do my acid polishing, besides being a 14-hour drive each way, that's really an ordeal with my assistants, I have to hire 6 factory guys. I have all these insurance policies in place. It's just kind of nutty, just to get the right surface. But I've been doing it for so many years, I'm hooked on it. And it's, somehow I get through it, and then something sells somewhere and I can pay for the next thing and so on. It's just been years and years and years of doing that. So I feel lucky. And a lot of it comes from people like yourselves who express interest and value it enough to, to buy one. And all that, I think it's a matter of luck. People say, oh, it's not lucky, you make your own luck. But, I make weird stuff.
Dan, can you hear me? Arlene had to leave.
Yeah.
We are so honored to know you and Linda. I need to mention, Arlene and I had the real pleasure of dancing together in the Rainbow Room for our high school prom, and subsequently you made our sconces, and at that time you weren't making chandeliers, if you recall. So you brought this fellow from Murano over to our house, and you insisted that he make the chandelier for us. So we're really honored to have the combination of the Lino and the Dan Dailey together.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. I know. It's just, this is what I was talking about before. Just think about the times that we've had together and gotten to know each other. I mean, it's been a long time. You even endured my terrible golf.
No, Arlene was by far the best golfer.
No, I'm saying mine's terrible.
Yeah, so was mine.
Actually, Dan, we played golf once, and I wanted to bet you for one of your circus pieces, and Linda insisted that you not take the bet.
Yeah.
But we ended up with it anyway.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that
just
would-
want to thank you so very much for your time today, and thank you, AACG members, for your wonderful support of the arts and the artists. And so I'm going to stop the recording and end our presentation. But thank you very, very much, Dan. This was fabulous.
Way to go,
Thank you,
Dan.
everyone.
Absolutely
Thank you.
fabulous.
That was an incredible presentation.